Welcome everyone to the Old Village School. My name is John Curtis, and 3 years ago, me and my co-producer, John Dracomi, began a series of art talks at this school. We have profiled over 20 artists from near and far, including from the African continent, from beyond the Arctic Circle, and from right here in Surrey. Artists including Kazimir Malevich, Mondrian, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Marsden Hartley, Jacob Lawrence, Emil Nolde, Natalia Goncharova, Sonia Delaunay, and Jody Edwards, and others. Tonight is a real treat for us to host award-winning artist Lisa Creed of North Carolina, who has lifelong ties to Newbury Neck and Surrey. Her work is represented in galleries throughout the United States. So please join me in a warm welcome for tonight's artist in residence, Lisa Creed.
Thank you. First of all, I'm delighted to be here. And if you can't hear me, wave. This whole area is very near and dear to me, and I'm going to start showing some slides in a minute or so, and they start with family history here. I also have my cousin Cam, my cousin Ben, and his daughter Lydia somewhere. And so Milams, I'm a Creed Milam, my dad was a Creed, my grandparents and mother were Milams, are represented. And we've been here since 1934, which a lot of people don't know. Back in the day, Newbury Neck was abandoned. The houses were empty and full of everything. So that when my grandparents bought their house, they didn't need anything except food, literally. And the house that they have is now the Fletcher house, and there's Sherry right there. So as of 1975, when her mother-in-law bought it, it slowly transitioned from Milam to Fletcher. But I'm going to be speaking about it in terms of the Milams.
Many years before anybody said, oh, you live in the Fletcher house.
Right.
And we're still sleeping in those beds.
Which were always there.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, those houses, same thing, when my parents bought their house, it was full of stuff. Also, it was full of a winter supply of wheat. It was still on the stalk. So, we probably should start with some slides. There we are. And we get bigger. So this was Mary Lou and Daniel Franklin Milam back, I think this photo was taken in the late 30s, early 40s. I'm not exactly sure which, but I'm pretty sure it's a Skudik. And my grandfather, by the way, always wore a suit. He did. Even when I went into the woods with him, he had a suit on. So that made life interesting. But in 1934, my grandmother, who at that point had 4 kids, my mother, who was born in Manila, my Uncle Franklin, who was born in Paris, my Uncle Bill, their dad, born, the only one in the States, in Nashville, and the last one was born in Panama. And they were, my mother's first language was Czech, because after they left Manila, they went to Paris where they had Franklin, then they went to what was Czechoslovakia. So her first language was Czech. So by the time my mother was 9, my grandmother was like, I need a home base. So the home base was the house on Newbury Neck. And it was that for many, many years. Oops. This house. So, yeah, back in the day. And it doesn't look the same now, does it?
No.
And it was very raw and rough. I can't, this is a very old photo that had been, I think, tinted. And I don't know who the people are. I'm guessing one of them was probably my grandmother, but it's also possible that my great-grandfather, who was who tinted photographs. He was also a preacher, but he also tinted photographs. So I don't think this is a color photo at all. This is a house almost today. Not quite. I don't know that the addition's on here.
No, the front door.
Yeah, but this is a house you almost see today. So, and then my grandmother bought what used to be the John Milam house, next one down, and today it's owned by the, I don't know her name, just help me here, but it's Chris Uphouse.
Kathleen McCall.
Kathleen McCall and Chris Uphouse. So that, but this house was in the family for many years. My grandmother actually bought it for her father, but he didn't make it. And so she started renting it to other people who became family friends for life, including, of all people, Virginia Brocklebank and Judge Timbers. This was our house. And my parents bought it, I think, in the, like, 1948-ish. And they loved it, and they did everything they could to put it back together, including painting it a lot. My father and my sort of adopted Uncle Marvin every year painted the house. It was something that they did. And this house was very, very dear to all of us, but unfortunately in January of 1985, it was arsoned. So that house is gone, and my mother built this. So this is a house that she built in around 1987, and that's how it is today. But place, the reason I show houses is we've had long roots here, and it's very, very dear. I can't imagine me without here. You know, we say, John's correct saying I'm coming from North Carolina, but that's not my home. This is my home, and it has been my home forever. Skudik, my dad adored this place, and we spent a lot of time exploring. And my father taught me a lot. He was an Old English scholar, and he taught me a lot about everything in the world. And he had a great sense of humor, as some of you may remember, and he could offend anybody. I went to Surry Elementary, the older Bonzi school, back in 1959, along with Lee Stewart and Johnny Stewart, who were two of my good friends. My mom grew up with Nan, their mother, and we got in trouble together all the time. And we can tell that I am not an innocent person. My mother decided that school pictures were being taken. I had to wear a dress. I didn't do dresses. My hair was supposed to be combed. I didn't do that. And I had to smile. This is what she got. Lobster. Place again, people again. That's my grandmother, my dad, grandfather, great Uncle George, and me. That's my first lobster. Great Uncle George did not think I could eat it. I did. He offered another one. I did. You know, it's in my blood. Lots of time was spent on the beach, and I think, Lori, you recognize some people here. So, Lori.
Yeah?
Rakakis now, Schaefer then. And her mom, Ann, who was my mother's best friend, they grew up together. One thing I forgot to mention, I knew I was going to skip something. How did we get here? My grandfather, Lori's grandfather, and Dr. Scammon, all knew each other, and I don't know how, except they were, Granddad and your grandfather worked together. But I don't know how Scam fit in, do you?
The only thing no, public health is all I know.
Yeah.
And they might have taught together, I'm not sure. But public health.
Yeah, but Scam was the only actual Mainer. And he's the one who bought the big house on the curve and lived there, and then his daughter Joanne and her husband, inherited it, and they were there until they moved somewhere else on the neck. But it was three doctors who knew each other who came to an abandoned place, and later on, 10 years or 11 years later, the Smiths came. Somewhere along there, the Bunnies came, and there was just this whole gathering of people who, we all grew up together, we all knew each other. And in addition, I got to know people because I hung out with the kids at school, and I also worked here after I graduated college. I came back and I taught Head Start in Franklin. I was a hostess at the Jordan Pond House.
There you go.
The original one, the one that burned down. I've worked at what used to be the bookstore in downtown Ellsworth, and I was a Vista volunteer, so lots of different things. So things kept me occupied here for many years. So the beach was important. And that year, the reason I went to Surry Elementary is we were supposed to go back to where my dad was working in Providence, Rhode Island. He was teaching at Brown. But my brother was born, and my mother was fairly ill after the pregnancy, so hence my school year began in Surry. I love this picture. Everybody's smoking, and the kids are running around.
That's my mom.
And that is Ann Shaver, Marge Smith, Nan Stewart. That's my little brother, and Lori, Tina, Jenny, Grace, and somebody else, Lily. So just never knew.
Yeah.
But the cigarettes are great, and that's the back of our house. It needed painting. The car was always an important place to hang out, and yes, that is the front field that I love to play in. Johnny and I took care of all kinds of business on the road.
Oh, jeez.
All kinds. It was a time of great transactions of God knows what, but our parents were worried. Now, we joined the Abenaki Yacht Club with this rowboat. This rowboat is leaky. It was rotten on the bottom, and Wally Hackett, I don't know if any of you remember that name, gave it to me to get it out of her barn. So it became my beloved rowboat, and I have to say my mother must have planned this picture. I hated dolls, and there are dolls with it. Terrible thing. I was very upset, but she got her picture.
Lisa, what did you call the yacht club?
I'm getting there. So, whoops, I got too far. So here is Johnny Stewart and me and the rowboat again. And about this time, and thank you for the reminder, Dee, we were asked to join the yacht club, which was an embarrassment to one and all because, of course, this is our boat. It is not seaworthy. But my parents took up the crusade to join, and they paid, I think it was $10.
$5.
$5?
Oh, okay.
I doubled it.
There you go.
$5, and we joined the Albee Yacht Club.
Yeah.
And my father and Marvin, who was painting the house, decided that they had to make fun of it because we were joining with a rowboat. So it became the Albee Yacht Club, and they presented that along with two plungers for the commode and the vice commode. So Marshall's father was not pleased. But we remained members in good faith because we paid our money. We never had a boat that was saleable. So I usually crewed with Laurie's mom, Ann, and also periodically with the judge who got us drunk. We were supposedly cold. And I don't know if I ever crewed with the Smiths or not. They probably wouldn't have had me because I wasn't well behaved. Okay, this is a bunch of the kids. So that's my grandmother. I'm the tallest one, by the way, with the long dark hair. And Ben, do you see yourself?
I do.
I know Cam knows where she is.
I see my brothers.
So this is most of Uncle. I think it's 5 of Uncle John's kids. He had 6. Am I in the way?
No?
Okay, we had 5 of Uncle John's kids. I think we had all of the Bill Milams. We had both kids from my family. The only ones missing were my Uncle Franklin's 3 kids. But that was how we used to run around here. We hung out as a pack, along with Schaefers, along with Smiths, along with Bunnies, along with Stewarts, eventually Dee showed up. And we just ran wild.
But we still do.
Huh?
And a cat.
Oh yeah, always.
Lisa, where is this taken?
On your front lawn.
That's what I thought. That's the birch tree there, I think.
Yeah.
Before the Mugos.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's-
Lisa.
yeah.
Lisa, where were the Briggs and the Smileys?
That's a smiley right there.
Oh, really? Yeah, and the Briggs, where were they in the chronology?
I'm not sure.
Wasn't that the Schaefers?
No, the
Smileys?
Schaefers are smileys.
Yeah.
My mom was
Okay.
a Smiley.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I thought Briggs. We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's across from the bunnies. You know where it is up in the,
Oh, you're talking
Up
about
in
the,
the field.
are you talking about the Vickers?
Vickers.
Maybe they were before the Vickers.
They were there in the 50s and 60s.
That would be the Vickers house, I think.
So the Vickers were before the Briggs?
I think they were after.
After.
Because I remember Laura and Harry Vickers showing up when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So they had not always been there.
Okay,
Something
thanks.
happened to the house, I remember, before the Vickers got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but I'm sort of lost on that one.
Thanks.
Teenage girls and Dr. William Schaefer.
Yeah.
He was also painting the house at their house, just so you know.
So what
Everybody
are those
hated
things
that.
on your hair?
I had curlers on, but not to get curls to straighten my hair.
She was,
The moon pool.
Oh.
We had many a gathering there, and the kids always made giant bonfires, and everybody that we knew was there because we were one huge happy family. And by the end of the night, all the parents were hanging on to each other singing Harvest Moon, and we were all running wild. Unfortunately, one of the sad things that's happening right now is that people don't want people walking on their beaches. I got kicked off of Hopkins Point the other day, which is too bad, by the new owner. He said, I'm trying to be a good neighbor. I'm like, that's not neighborly. But back in the day, we used to run wild, which was lots of fun. But this place, it's about place, it's about people, it's about the connections we make, and all of this goes into my work. And this is one of, I forgot to say, these are mostly my mother's photographs. So she's here in spirit. She was a great photographer, and this is one of her favorite pictures, and that's their brother, Nick, lighting a fire,
Okay.
and Doug is in the picture.
yeah, it's my brother Doug.
Yeah, he's here.
Where is the?
He's behind my brother.
Oh, okay. There's there, yeah.
He's always here.
Yeah.
We loved him. My parents, whoops, wow, I missed the picture. Oops, what happened? Sorry, I might have grabbed the wrong batch. It's okay. I'm going to make a quick switch. Hold on. That is weird. I somehow managed, or maybe I just pulled up the wrong file. I apologize. These are the pictures I missed. That's my mother, Uncle Franklin, Uncle Bill, and Uncle John and Uncle Bill
Wow.
in front of your house. Again, in front of your house.
Yes.
Nice tie.
Yeah. And this is the picture of them a few years later with their mother, and that's another photograph that's over the photograph. But we have long roots here, all of this sort of figures into my work, and I haven't forgotten you, John. So yes, there we are in all our splendor. My mother in the pink, Anne, your mother, me, back when I had an orange streak in my black hair, and a dear friend, and the only one of us that's still here is me. It's Diana Highland. People who supported me in my work. My mother was happiest when she was breaking the rules. She was told many times not to take rocks from Schoodic and not to feed the gulls. She This was her last summer here. And she loved her geranium, she loved her house, she loved everybody that she knew. Whenever she would come to the house here. My mother she was a depressed person. For her, the glass was half full. But when she was in Maine, the glass was full. Abby and Lena.
Oh, my
Oh,
I love them. They were an institution. Anybody who knows them remembers their cookies. Lena's cookies, Lena's mittens, jams, all kinds of good stuff. And they also remember if you were a guy, having your hair cut by Abby and being driven in a taxi by Abby. Institutions. Tom and Denise. I have to give Denise full credit for how I paint. Because back in the day, when I would paint my little landscapes when I was up here, it would be this much land and this much sky. And she said, Lisa, it's about the sky. So remember that when I show you my actual work. And also music. We spent many hours in the cabine listening to Tom, who was a violist. I think he's, didn't he donate all of his music to the Bagaduce Library or something like that?
Yes.
And Denise was a wonderful carver of wood. Anna and Bill Schaefer. These are people who supported me as a kid and supported me as an adult. Marshall and Marjorie. John. Who, truth, I was 3 years old when I met him. He was a little bit older, and he carried me on his shoulders. I wonder why he doesn't do it anymore. With Donna, his wonderful wife, who I love. The girls. Lori, Jenny, Tina, who can't be here tonight. Laura, you're somewhere. Yep. Dee and John. And I believe it was last year that Dee was talking about all of us knowing each other and our history here and being together. And that was a very important moment. So I had to put you in doing that. Boating. Remember, we never had a boat. So I've always sailed with somebody else, and now more recently I go on the the Casale's motorboat, Casale Frenelli. Is that right? Mike Coffin's Silhouette. And my brother eating lobster. Just to know that Rob Creed is my brother. And he's a great brother. He was here earlier. He was here in July with his wife. Why did I put me and Taos here? When I went to Taos as an artist in residence, an artist fellowship in 1999, I kept wondering at 7,000 feet why it looks so familiar. Turned out that Taos is where the inland sea is. So I was at the beach and just didn't know it until a few weeks later. But I was out there for a 3-month residency, and it was an amazing time. It really influenced my art. They gave me a wonderful, I called it my double wide casita. And so I would paint there for hours on end, and the same way I would paint here. So occasionally I do plein air here. And this picture, by the way, is the one that's in the Schaefer house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Your mom and dad scoffed it up before I left town. Yeah. Place. I paint the front field. You'll see some paintings of that shortly. I take pictures of the front field constantly. I've already done it this year. The seasons. The point that we got kicked off of.
I hope those trees never disappear.
No.
They're iconic.
No, they're iconic. Looking the other way towards Gibson's. And the view that L.L. Bean used a few years ago. I love fog. It'll show up in the paintings. And rainbows, again, in the front field. So that's the last of this group. I'm going to switch to the actual work. Any questions on history? It's wonderful.
Yes.
Brings back a lot of great memories. Brings back a lot of great memories.
Yeah. Well, it's been, for me, it's just been a whole thing about going down memory lane. And as I told John, I was just going to put together this show, which you're going to see next, but I realized that this area, this place, these people, the history, everything is in my work, no matter where I paint. I paint in my studio in North Carolina. I make Maine skies. My gallery in Wilmington complained that they're not North Carolina skies. I said, sorry. They're not going to be North Carolina skies. North Carolina is where I, have a permanent residence, but it's not where my heart lives. And truly, my taproot is here. And I think, I know lots of people are coming here and loving this place. And there's a lot of building going on, and it's hard. When the Fletchers bought my grandmother's house, they also bought the whole lot, all the land. And then
100 acres.
yeah. But then, as happens in families, different members own things and things get decided and sold off and houses go up. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't come and fall in love with a place and make it a place that they love. But as somebody who's been running wild on Newbury Neck since let's see, I was born in '53, so I started running wild a couple years later. But, you know, we ran all over the place. We would get together as kids and we would run from shore to shore. It didn't matter. Nobody said we couldn't be on the beach. Nobody said we couldn't be in the woods. And it's hard today to be told that you can't. And so I have 3 rules in my sea and sky paintings. I want to show the place as I remember it. So I have no boats. They're in the abstract ones, you'll see them, don't worry, Mike. I have no houses, and I have no people. Because I want it remembered as it was when it was wild and open and you could go anywhere. I did a show at the Courthouse Gallery in Ellsworth in 2010, and these are just 2 pictures to sort of give you a sense of my normal scale. I did bring a few small pieces because it's just easier to travel with small work that you could handle and look at. But most of my work is larger. So just to give you a sense. But in 2009, I decided to do 1 a day for a year that stretched into more like 7.5 years. And these 3 pieces that I'm going to show you now are from that series. And I have kept that series. The first 3 years of that 7.5 years is still together. And I'm trying to figure out a good place to donate it because I don't want it taken apart. I have sold pieces from beyond that. But the point of this series is just to see what an artist's mind does day to day. And I had to come up with some ideas of what would make it more effective. But initially, for the first 3 years, I just did a lot of exploration. And I did a show at Duke in 2010 of 1.5 years in order, calendar order. It's quite an installation. I can pull up a picture later to show you.
Lisa,
Yes.
do you suppose we could turn that light out because it's really taking over?
Got it, take it.
Okay. Does that help?
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't see. So these are actually from 2009. They're 3 days in a row, so 20, 21, and 22. So here I am back in my studio in Durham, North Carolina, painting Maine from memory. It's just in me. And these are smaller pieces. I think they're on like 11 by 15 with a square in the center and then the painting. This piece is called 3 Islands. And I just paid to have my taxes done with this. So my tax guy likes to have paintings instead of money. So I'm grateful. So it lives in his office. This is a piece that's called Almost There. And it's a little faded and it's brighter, if you can see that. So these are going to be a little bit more faded on the screen.
Are these all the same medium? Oil, acrylics, watercolor? Yeah.
I work primarily in acrylic, but I also use graphite. I tried oil, but I'm too impatient. Dries, it takes forever unless you use other mediums. And then there's a whole issue of solvents.
Yeah.
So I work in acrylic.
Oh, wow.
This is August Island. There was one called Jed's Island. Just so you know, Jed's Island is owned by a corporation in Durham.
Oh, wow.
This is a big piece. This is, it says 60 by 48, I think. And just the idea of sea and sky and rolling in, endlessness, island view, rolling sea and sky. This is 4 feet by 3 feet. This piece, I think, is also 3 by 4. This is a smaller piece. It's 12 inches. It actually lives in the house on Newbury Neck. My mother claimed it. The idea behind it was swimming into shore. Islands, floating islands. And it's also 3 by 4 feet. So work tends to be bigger. This piece is front field, Union River Bay. I paint it, as I said, I take pictures of it all the time. And this piece is owned by the woman who started Maine Home and Design. Front field again. I still have this one because my mother claimed it also. Heading out, another big one. This may be 3 by, well, no, this may be 24 by 3, or 4 rather, 2 by 4 feet. Hopkins Point.
Oh, wow.
This is one where I got a complaint from my North Carolina Coastal Gallery saying, well, we just sold the painting Hopkins Point, but it wasn't a Maine sky. I mean, it wasn't a Carolina sky. And I said, no, it's a Maine sky. They couldn't stop. Magic Time. Meet You at 4. Misty, Miss Burning Off. My glasses have fogged up. On Fire. Sandbar. This is actually more the sandbar going to Deer Isle.
Oh, okay.
Sea's Edge. Strange Light. We get Strange Light here a fair amount, and I believe that a certain Benjamin has that one. Yep. Summer Storm. Unexpected Shift, as we know the weather does that here. Contemplation. Morgan Bay. I tried to paint one of the rocks, I sort of put grass on it. Facing east, the front field again. Places of the Heart. Sort of taken from roughly where the Vicary's house is now. I'm looking down, but not the iconic trees. I didn't want to give it away.
Yeah.
So my work is also, my background is abstraction. So I started working abstractly decades ago, and I only shifted into sea and sky in 2004 when I wanted to make my point about keeping the open fields and keeping it the way it was, and not putting people, boats, and houses in. So, but the sea and sky still slides into my abstract work. This is called Across the Morning Sky, and it's actually on a CD cover for a harpsichord friend of mine. And there is a chair. Not a house, but a chair. Summer Breeze. Still a Maine sky, though. Boats do come in. Actually, this piece and this piece both live with a collector in Portland. And this piece, too. This is in honor of my mother. My mother's last words were, "Have fun." And she was gone about an hour later. And the flags are "Have fun."
Oh. I love that. Semaphore?
Hmm?
Semaphore flags?
Yeah. So, in honor of her.
Oh,
My rowboat,
your rowboat.
it appears, and that rowboat is very important. This is called Childhood Memory. And I come back to that boat a lot. A lot of my earlier works had kinds of rowboats in them, and they were more abstracted, but this one is that rowboat. It's just not green, and it doesn't have holes in it as far as I know, but it is in the grass.
Yes.
And then I've recently been commissioned by both Duke Children's Hospital and then later the Austin Children's Hospital in Texas to do some paintings. They both were putting in new children's wings. And using Maine, Sea, and Sky, I gave them paintings that incorporated that. This is not one of the series. This is a separate one called Take Wing. But this is the Austin series. There's 3 of them, and they're 40-inch square. And one of my college friends, when she saw the first set when I did them for Duke, the paper airplanes, really moved her because she had lost her son at 12 to cancer. And she said when he was in the hospital, the thing that gave him some relief was making paper airplanes and throwing them around the atrium. So this second series that's in Austin is called Andrew's Airplanes, because I consider him my muse. And it was also my way to give back to somebody who was a senior when I was a crazy freshman in college. And she put up with me, so she was great. But so these are in honor of her son, Andrew. So this is the first, the second, and the third. This piece is called Typographic Landscape. I'm a designer by trade. I was a marketing designer for 10.5 years at IBM, and I left that because I was not a corporate girl, and I worked for a small design firm before they went under, and then I ran my own business for a number of years. And after that, I eventually decided that I was more interested in teaching. So I started teaching at a historically black college in Raleigh, North Carolina, and started teaching both fine art and design. And then shifted to the Art Institute of Raleigh-Durham, which unfortunately is gone now. But they were a series of art institutes across the U.S. They were a for-profit college, some of which were less than, but our particular one was terrific. I have grads out there doing very well, and even during lockdown, during COVID, they had work and they made livings and they had insurance. So our school turned out a lot of really terrific talent. So my background in design led me to love typography. So this piece is made up of letters, as is this piece. But again, sailboats come in, so it's got that. But design and art go really well together. The difference between them is that design is about solving someone else's problem, whereas art is about a personal statement. And then this series, I actually brought these guys here. They're small, they're 8-inch square. And during last fall, I just felt like the world was in a challenging place, that there's just not enough love and too much hate. And I'm for love. I'm for trying to support people and trying to be there and trying to be kind. And so I decided to put out a piece of positive energy every couple of days. So I made a bunch of small paintings and had too much fun doing them and just did it. And a couple of these actually I did last summer, and they live in Dee's house. I think these 2 are yours, Dee.
Yes.
And then these are the smaller ones, which are the same size, that I brought tonight. Whoops. Are these? Yeah, okay. But they're, weird notifications keep coming up, but they're not on the screen up here, so that's good. But the whole idea was that until we can figure out how to live together, we're in trouble. And we have to figure out how to support each other and be there for each other. So that's my political statement for the night. So those are the ones that are here. And then this piece I did a little bit later, and one of my college friends got up with me and said I have to have it, so it went out to the West Coast. And this is my last painting to show tonight, and another cousin, Tommy Milam. Remember Tommy? My Uncle John's 5th child got up with me and said, I know where that is. I need it. And so we worked out the family and friends deal. And it went and lived with him. But that goes back to the whole thing about place and how for us Milams, how important it is, and for all of you, how important it is. But the roots here are deep, and the roots here are important. And, you know, we may be seen as summer people, but we're people who love place and keep coming back for more. That's it. If anybody has any questions? Yes?
Are there any particular artists or artists' philosophies who've influenced you strongly?
Yes. First of all, I should give my mother a lot of credit, because when I was very young and she needed time away from me, hard to believe, she decided that she would put out my crayons, my paper, my milk, my cookies, pencils, and sit at this table and make something. And Mommy's going in there for 5 minutes. 5 minutes became 10 minutes, 20 minutes, hours. And so she taught me that discipline. But after that, my mother spent a lot of time taking me to art museums, and I've seen everything. The person who changed my life, though, was Helen Frankenthaler. It was 1975. I'd majored in art in school. I studied art history, and I loved art, but I didn't have that moment. I mean, I knew I wanted to do art, but I was, you know, all over the place. But I walked into a show of Frankenthaler's in Seattle. We were visiting Uncle Franklin. And we went to see a Brancusi show. I never saw the Brancusi. I saw Helen's work. And that's when I knew what I wanted to do. Now, I don't paint like Helen Frankenthaler. She was pour and stain and work on the floor and giant canvases. That's not what I do. I do other work, but I paint because she made me want to paint more than anything else in the world. My art training is sculpture, not painting. And I also studied photography. I also studied poetry. I was a writer, but seeing Helen Frankenthaler's work was it. Also Richard Diebenkorn, David Parks. I love the school, the San Francisco Bay Area School, and all the artists associated with that. I love Rothko, de Kooning, the mid-century kind of movement, and I love Basquiat. You know, he was somebody who really stepped out. I thought Andy Warhol was interesting, but I wasn't interested in doing that. I just thought it was interesting that he was challenging the norm, and I think that's an important thing to do. You know, all the classical artists, you know, for generations, I mean, you could look at Da Vinci, you could look at all the Italian Renaissance, all of that. Also, though, Viking ships. I didn't show anything that had Viking ships in it, but my dad was an Old English scholar, and when I was 9 and 10, we lived in Sweden for a year, and we went to all kinds of Viking places, and including to the museum in Oslo. And so that whole Scandinavian thing was huge influence too, and just sort of the vessels. I have a lot of work with Viking ships abstracted in it, and I just didn't show tonight. I love medieval stuff. I mean, when you grow up with a father who is an Old English scholar, you see a lot of medieval things. And plus you also, my bedtime stories were Beowulf and Grendel and Grendel's mother, not very nice, and the Greek myths. So my grandmother, Mary Lou, was constantly saying, "Why isn't your child having nightmares?" I thought they were interesting. Another thing that really influenced me was when we lived in Providence, we went to the Rinsley Museum a lot. And there's a huge room, and it's dark, and there's a giant Japanese Shinto Buddha in there that I would stand in front of, and there was a Shiva behind it, and that's all that was in the room. But my other piece of favorite art was Pericles with Medusa's head, a very tiny painting.
Dark.
Is it Perseus or Pericles? It's one of them.
Yeah.
But you know, holding Medusa's head and she can't turn it to rock anymore, you know. So, extremes. I like lots of things. But it's Helen Frankenthaler who really, you know, that's why I paint. Other questions? Yes?
Just a comment. one of the things I've done is photography.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that really annoys me in photography is all these darn wires all over the place. And yet you have public printed pictures where you look at the wires as the focus point in your photographs.
Well, you know, I did a show in, I think it was 2022, it was sort of in between, things were starting to open up, but the closing up again after lockdown. And that show was all about the wires. And it was about the lines that connect us, and even though we have these now, we don't need actual lines. Back in the day, you know, on the neck we had party lines. So we used to know who was calling, we could listen in. But we did. But I brought those into the paintings because of that very thing, that they became important, that connection. Thank you. Yes?
Lead me to your poetry.
Lead you to my poetry? I don't have anything with me.
Where do I find it?
I'm in various anthologies, and I could hook up with Marshall and figure out how to connect you to some stuff.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah, I actually, when I was up here, I studied with Joel Oppenheimer, who was one of the Black Mountain poets. He was teaching at Bar Harbor. Yeah.
You did some abstracts.
Yes.
And went back to landscapes.
Well, I actually do them both at the same time now.
Okay.
So they just sort of, if I wake up today and feel like wanting, you know, to do a landscape, I will, and if I don't, I'll do an abstract. But now, actually, I'm doing something very different now. You want to see? Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Show us.
Are we still connected? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. I, of course, don't look at the screen. So I will show you a little bit of what I'm up to right now, because it's very different. I won't go through all, well, no, I won't go through all of them. Well, maybe I will. It's just easier. So these are basically called modern fairy tales. And this is the work I'm up to at the moment. Very different. Now this one looks more like a landscape. These don't. And they're all 11 by 15. And they're all about what's going on in the world and modern fairy tales.
You're having a really good time.
I am. The most important thing is to play. I play a lot. That's playing with the iconic Durham water tower and turning it into a teapot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
These have a lot more graphite in them.
Yeah. And just, you know, this other language that I put in as well.
Wow.
This is one of my favorite titles. It's a modern fairy tale paperback dragon. This is a trickster. Oh, this is a commission I did for my next door neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
It's it's big. The others are small. This is 27 by 48.
Got fish,
You just never know what I'll do next.
fish and jellyfish.
I'm totally unpredictable. And because I was put in a reading group in 5th grade with all the other rejects, we were called the crows. And the other ones were the robins, the Baltimore Orioles, the Blue Jays, the Cardinals, all those birds. We were the crows. I've taken the crows on as my friends. This is called Crow Wisdom.
Oh.
And this is the last one I did before I came up here, called Universal Guardian.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I've been up to. So you never know what I'll do next. I'm totally unpredictable.
I don't think you know what you're going to do next.
I don't. I literally go out to the studio and start playing. So for any of you who are interested in playing in the arts, play is really important, and also no judgment. I've been also teaching a class at the Durham Arts Council called Painting Gone Wild for 20 years. And a lot of people come in, and I have people who just keep coming time and time and time again because they can just come and paint whatever they want, and I'll give as much or as little instruction as they want. So
But everything is so endless.
Yeah,
I mean, you could look at this for life, and every time you looked at it, you would find something new.
yeah,
Ooh,
it's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I do all of this to my mother in terms of giving me the freedom to explore. And so even though she's no longer on the planet, some of hers in the graveyard on Surrey Road, in Newbury Neck.
Her ashes were in our front field. I thought her ashes were in our front field.
No, those are Mary Lou's.
Oh, your grandmother's, okay.
Yeah, some of them, not all. Most of her is in North Carolina. But my mother's ashes are divided between the graveyard and the bay. She went swimming. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
There are business cards over here if you want to take one to, you can go look at my website and see all the trouble I get into. So feel free. And thanks for coming.